Hi there, welcome back. It's a hot June evening as I'm writing these, but it probably isn't very hot while you're watching these. So, we're going to talk here about multiplying and dividing radicals. And we want to talk first about what the product rule is. And this is kind of a general rule. The product rule says that if you have some number a times the mth root of x, and then you multiply times b times the mth root of y, that's going to give you ab times the mth root of x times y. And that probably is something that's fairly believable to you. And that's something that we'll use throughout our work here. So take a look at this example. There are a lot of ways of approaching problems like this, but we'll just use that rule that we have, the product rule, and we'll rewrite this as 3 times the cube root of 40 times a to the 7th. See that? And so now we have a single radical expression, and we want to break it down. Well, let's remember, we want to try to find a perfect cube that is a factor of 40, and that'll be 8. And then remember, the powers of a that we can take the cube root of are multiples of 3, which would be 8, a to the 6th. And what we're left with here is 5a. And so this is going to equal 3 times the cube root of 8, a to the 6th is 2a squared times the cube root of 5a. And so in this case, our final answer is 6a squared times the cube root of 5a. Okay? So it's all about, in this case, the product rule and applying it. Okay, so check this one out. So here again, let's have you do some work. So use the product rule and multiply these two things out and see what you get, and see if you agree with what I got. How'd you do? Did you get the same thing? Alright, so now we're going to rewrite this as the fourth root of something that you can take the fourth root of times whatever is left. Alright, so I'll leave it to you again. What do you get in this case? Press pause and write it in. Okay, how'd you do here? So now we simply take the fourth root. The fourth root of 81 is 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 81. The fourth root of a to the 8th is a squared, because a squared times a squared times a squared times a squared, you add up those 4 2's and you get 8. The fourth root of b to the 12th is b cubed, and then we're left with that right there. So there you go. It's a good example to kind of look through, make sure that you can follow each step before we go on. So here's the quotient rule, same idea as the product rule. Nothing surprising here. So let's see how we use this. So let's suggest that with all the examples that we have coming up, and there'll be a few more, that you press pause after you see the example and try to work it out on a piece of paper, and then press resume, and let's see if you get the same thing that I get. Okay? So here's the first step. 15 over 20 is the same as 3/4, and 108 over 2 is the same thing as 54. So now we want to break it up and simplify that radical. Press pause. Yes, get that? Okay, so now we can write that as 3/4 times 3 times the cube root of 2, and so our final answer is 9/4 times the cube root of 2. Okay, let's keep practicing. So this problem seems pretty simple, and we really can't divide 3 into 2. And what we want to do here, and one of the rules that not a rule, but one of the guidelines that we follow, is that we don't want to ever have a radical in the denominator. So we like to have no radicals in the denominator, and so what we're going to do with this is take our problem, which is 3 square root of 2 over 5 times the square root of 3, and we're going to multiply top and bottom by something to get rid of the square root of 3. So the simplest thing we can do to get rid of the square root of 3 is just multiply by the square root of 3. So in the top, that gives us 3 times the square root of 6, and on the bottom we get 5 times 3, which is 15, and so this simplifies to the square root of 6 over 5. No radical in the denominator. Okay, so you've probably seen that before, but that's something that we'll practice with a couple more times. So check this out and think about it. What is it that I can multiply top and bottom by so that I get rid of the radical in the bottom? Well, I have the cube root of 2, and I can't take the cube root of 2, but I could take the cube root of 8. And so what I do is I multiply top and bottom by the cube root of 4. And so that gives me 3 times the cube root of 40 over 2 times the cube root of 8, which is 2. And so my answer here is 3 times the cube root of 8 times 5, right, over 4. The cube root of 8 is 2, so I get 6 times the cube root of 5 over 4, which is finally the simplified as 3 times the cube root of 5 over 2. Right? So this time it was a little bit trickier what I had to multiply by. So make sure that you understand how that is before we go on. Okay, so why don't you try this one? Press pause, see if you can figure out what to multiply top and bottom by, and let's see how you do. So did you find the right thing to multiply top and bottom by? Think about why we want to use what we did. Okay, let's keep going. Press pause. So when I multiply out, remember I add the exponents. Now the whole point is that what I have in the bottom, this is a power of x that I can take the 4th root of. This is a power of y that I can take the 4th root of, and that's because each of these numbers, the 4 and the 8, are multiples of 4. So let's see if you can write out the correct answer now. Here's an intermediate step. I'm taking this term and writing it as something that I can take the 4th root of. And again, they're multiples of 4. Okay, let's write out the final answer now. So look what happened when I simplified this. I have an xy squared in the top and xy squared in the bottom. So they can cancel, and I'm left with just the 4th root of x times y to the 3rd. Alright, so we got into it pretty deep there, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.